Hello, YouTube land.
Hi there. Welcome to Can They Say That?
I am Polly Hamp,
I'm Gina Berkmeyer.
and we have a fun topic today.
Yeah, it's fun and a little sticky. I don't know. Anyway, it's mental health and the church. We're going to kind of talk about the good, the bad, and the ugly of that. So stay tuned. I think, again, this is a subject where you don't have to be in a church to understand what we're talking about or to get anything out of this.
Right.
I think everybody knows someone who is in a church or who has been to a church or who may be struggling emotionally. But the bigger picture is that we are all physical, spiritual, mental, emotional beings. And so there will be something in this for you.
Yeah. So here we go.
So hang on.
Here we go.
Can they say that?
Can they say that?
Can they?
So if you guys can hold on, I'm going to restart that.
Take two.
Take two. Okay, we're going to undo.
She's actually really good at this. You get to see all this.
Okay,
It's like outtakes.
it is. Okay, ready, you guys? Here we go. Just kidding.
Take three.
10. So
No, third time's a charm.
it's true. Okay, I just need to get my starter point back to the start. That's all.
Where a starter point belongs. At the start.
Just one starter point off. Here we
We're
go.
good. I promise. This is it.
Can they say that?
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 They can, and they will. They will.
Say what you wanna say and let the words fall out. Honestly, I wanna see you be brave with what you wanna say.
Hello, hello. Welcome to Can They Say That? I am Polly Hamp.
And I am Gina Berkmeyer. Today we are going to talk about mental health and the church. I know that might automatically think that this disqualifies you as a listener, but hang in, don't go away. Because really what we're talking about is a balance of the whole person and how that can and should be taken care of well. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and physically. And most often we do see that sort of challenge between that happening in the church.
Yes, and we'll be talking to several groups of people today. It's about the church and staff at church, but also the people who attend church. We're talking about ministries. We're talking about just kind of the knowledge of if you work with people who... sorry.
It's okay. She's laughing because we have a dog scratching in the
Yes,
background.
so if you get a little...
keep listening.
Yeah, it's just beautiful. And so we're going to be talking to several people groups today that this might speak to.
Yes, yes. So I think one of the reasons why, when we were talking about topics for the show, one of the reasons I wanted to do this is because in my practice professionally, I see a lot of people come through the door who have gone to the church first and things have not gone well. Now, I want to say that there are a lot of churches out there who actually do this really well, and we are going to talk about why we think they do it well and what are the things that show us that they are handling this topic well. At the same time, I can tell you that there was a part of my career over a decade ago, almost decade and a half now, where I worked predominantly in a pastoral role towards people and did what a lot of churches you'll hear the term lay counseling. And while I'm grateful that I didn't take some things to the extreme like I have seen, having now been clinically trained, there's so many places and spaces I wish I could have gone back and known what I know now.
Yeah.
And so I think that it's getting to be in this world where 60 million people in the United States are struggling with mental illness. It is pretty hard to go anywhere where you're not going to run into somebody that is having a struggle. And there's a big continuum on that when we say mental illness.
Yes, so take a minute to kind of define mental illness.
Well, I would say anything from some depression and anxiety to a full-blown personality disorder. Anything from prolonged grief, exposure to prolonged grief, exposure to abuse in your history that has not been dealt with, that's kind of coming up in odd ways in the present. You just seem like relationships aren't working out. There is a crisis of mental health within a person when that is happening, as there is a crisis of mental health in a person who's been diagnosed with something like schizophrenia or bipolar disorder or any of those things. None of which, by the way, are a life-ending sentence. None of which are something that are the result of having too little faith. And I think that those are some of the rubs that we come across in the faith community.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So some of what I have seen done really well, let's maybe talk about that first.
Yeah, I would
because
love
that's
that.
kind of nice.
Yes.
to go there first.
Yeah.
So there's some churches that we know personally that we've been parts of who some have gone the extra step to create a referral list of counselors. And that isn't just, oh, you're a counselor and you happen to attend church here. Oh, sure, we'll put your name on the list. It's actually, okay, we're going to have you come in and sit down with a couple of our pastors. We're going to ask you some questions. This is just a side note, y'all, for anybody who's thinking to go to a counselor for anything, relational challenges, career, whatever. It is perfectly okay to ask your counselor. Don't ask them to go into detail. That's not fair. But to make sure your counselor has done their own work.
Yes.
And that they are not asking you to go somewhere that they haven't gone themselves, where they haven't done their own work, because that's really important.
I agree.
And so I think there are churches, I know for a fact there are churches out there who do that really well, who do sit with mental health professionals and ask these kind of questions, and then take it a step further and to ask them how their faith works alongside their clinical practice to really help people in a holistic way. Some churches take it a step further and they have their own counseling center.
Yes, which I think is brilliant and very smart, because then you've got, kind of everything wrapped into one, as long as the questions are being asked and as long as the, what do you believe and how do you do what you do kind of things are congruent with, helping people with mental health issues.
Right.
But what I love about having the counseling centers within the churches is that you've got that holistic view. You have
Yes.
community, they get plugged in, they get the pastors who can speak life into them, but then also have like the groups, if they've got group settings or individual settings. There's just a power in the community that I think is done, if done well,
Right.
can be just a beautiful holistic picture of healing.
And I think the caveat to that is, while not everyone needs the clinical intervention, I think it is really important to have people that are trained in that when we're talking about, if we're going to open the door and say this is legitimately a counseling center, even if it's at a church, that does invite a whole array of challenges into the door. And so if they're going to come, you need to be ready to handle that.
Yes.
And so having that clinical training, what I love also that has become a trend, and I don't know for how long, I've been out of a master's program for a while now, but when you choose to get your master's degree in clinical training at a faith-based institution, what I had experienced and what I've seen in a couple other faith-based institutions for higher learning, like graduate level, is that they are now requiring pastors to take some counseling classes.
That is so good.
Yeah.
I love hearing that. So hopefully the trend is still happening.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, I hope so too. I
Yeah.
hope that continues. And not at the level that those who are going on to clinical licensure are going to get, but enough to know, because I think one of the important things is to know when it's just gone above your pay grade.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? Like, okay, we've walked this far and I'll keep walking with you.
Yes.
Because we want to have that spiritual perspective covered. And at the same time, let's get you to somebody who understands at a greater and higher level than I do.
And what a, when you know that and know where your line is to be able to help people in the church, knowing that, I mean, I would think as a pastor and as church leaders, that would almost be like, like,
Right.
you know, it's like a sigh of relief. Like, okay, I can't save everybody, and actually, you're not called to save. You're called to
That's
love.
true.
And so it's that I can take a deep breath because I have now built this community of counselors that I trust to be able to send the people that God has given us, you know, access to. Then I think it's like a. And what we were talking about at lunch today was in the ministry that I'd started, we would like vet and grill every single counselor. And we would be like, you know, you get to see our women. Like, you know, we do need you, but you have the honor to get to sit
That's
in
right.
front of the people that we get to minister to. And so I think when we look at it that way, and I love when counselors are like, it is such a privilege that I get to sit with the people that you trust me with them.
Yes.
And so, you know, it's that, don't, like what you were saying earlier, don't be afraid to ask questions, you know, and if, you know, a counselor seems puffed up or, you know, somebody is like, oh, I can't believe you're asking me this. Don't you see my alphabet behind my name? That would be a very first clue that maybe you don't want them taking care of your people.
I think that's right.
So
I think that's right. So I want to share something. I told some colleagues that I was going to do this, that we were going to do an episode on mental health and the church. And I said, what are some things that you want people to know? So I just have a couple things that I'm going to share that I think are really interesting. And one of them was knowing your limits. If you are a volunteer in a ministry, if you are a minister, a pastor, if you're in that kind of role, know what your limits are. Know when it's time to refer out and make sure you have qualified referrals to give to people. That was one that came up with several colleagues when
really
I
good.
told them we were going to do this as a topic. The other was lack of training for pastors. So I would say if you are a pastor or you know a pastor and they don't have that, I would really think that that's something that I would encourage you to get. Now, you don't have to go like, you know, crazy and get your master's in counseling or something like that if you don't want to do that. But there are a lot of really great clinical classes you can get out there where you don't necessarily have to have that pre-qualifying education. There's a great organization out there called PESI, P-E-S-I.
Okay.
And it's a continuing education venue for a wide array of topics that are all mental health related, and a lot of them are very holistically inclined. And you don't necessarily have to be an LPC or an LMFT or a social worker or something like that in order to qualify to go to one of these. So there's things like that that are out there. There are seminaries where you can go and you can just say, hey, I want to come take a marriage and family class. I want to come take an addictions class. Y'all, addiction is so prevalent in our world right now. It's out of control. And so I think it's irresponsible to not at least have peripheral knowledge and ability to speak into some of those struggling areas.
And the
People-
addiction's not just alcohol and drugs.
Nope.
It's food, it's porn, it's
gambling.
There's so many, there's a myriad of addictions that are out there, and it's actually just the structure and belief that's inside. And so having an understanding of what addictions are, I love that, you know, you go into classes and just check out your local seminary or probably even online.
Yeah, there's a lot that you can get online. So another common thread in my colleagues that I spoke to, and I will say, I want to put this caveat in, all of the colleagues that I spoke to are clinically trained. They're either LPCs, LMFTs, or social workers. And I think that's, I don't think there were any other, one PhD. But they all said this belief within the church when it comes to mental illness, particularly, that the Bible holds all the answers. And so we want to say loud and clear, do we think that Jesus is the answer? Yes. And also, the Bible does not hold all the answers, meaning that it is not prescriptive. You cannot open the Bible and specifically see how to do something like EMDR, which is a critical tool I believe, in helping people with trauma? Or what are appropriate supplements and medications to help people with depression and anxiety to manage that?
Yeah.
What are some of the cognitive tools to help change your thought process and deal with obsessive thoughts?
Yeah.
None of that is in the Bible, per se. Now, there is a lot of really important pieces to find in Scripture that support this and encourage this and even give some direction. And yes, Scripture is sufficient, but it is not exhaustive, particularly on the topic of mental health.
That makes sense.
And I think that's important to know. Let's see what else. A general insensitivity by pastors and staff members at churches, where they may be throwing around labels when they're clearly not qualified to make a diagnosis.
Oh, goodness,
right?
yes.
Like,
Yes.
oh, so and so called again. They're so bipolar. Well, how you don't know
Right.
that, and so now you've labeled this person, or they're so borderline, or they're so this or that. And first and foremost, no one is ever their diagnosis.
Right.
It is something they have. It isn't who they are.
Right.
So, but that throwing around, on staff where someone becomes labeled and then they don't get the care and the support that they need
Yeah.
because they have been labeled this or that. And then also just kind of, that isn't, by the way, just in the church.
Right.
Right? Like in our circles of influence, every one of us, we may have those sandpaper people who just rub us the wrong way.
Yes.
and do crazy things, what we think are crazy things, and we throw off a diagnosis about that person to other friends who may be in their circle.
Yeah.
And I think it's just so dishonoring to the humanity of that person. So I think that's something that we want to be really, really careful about too.
One of the things that you mentioned, I think not just pastors need to be trained. When we were listening to Rick Warren, he was talking about just the importance of, who is usually the first person to get a call in the church.
The
The
receptionist.
receptionist. And he or she ends up being triage. And, just the importance of, yes, it needs to come from the top down, from leadership down in the training, but training everybody within your staff to know what to do.
I would say that's right.
And the same thing of don't throw out labels and have this expectation of the people that are working within, your church or your ministry, all on the same page of how to handle mental health issues and what to do with it.
Absolutely. So I think at a minimum, have a procedure if you are a part of a church. And if you're listening and you're staff at a church and you don't have a procedure for what happens when someone calls and says something like they're thinking about killing themselves, or they've just overdosed and they're coming out of the hospital, they have nowhere to go, people look to the church for hope.
Yeah.
And so if the person who is the frontline phone call answering person, they don't know what to do with that, that's a big problem.
Yeah.
Someone fleeing a domestic violence situation,
Yes.
someone struggling with depression, any of those things where someone needs that additional emotional support, really know what needs to happen within your organization in order to make that happen.
And this is not hard to do, you guys. It's going to take a little bit of time, but just think how it will undo the difficult when it actually does happen. And so just taking time with your staff and training and having that procedure and the protocol in place. I mean, what a beautiful way to have a discussion about all of this and to be able to, why do we do church? Why are we pastors? To help people.
Yeah.
And to see them no matter where they are in the walks of their lives and how much better. Jesus was always equipped
Right.
with the right answer.
Well, that's the truth.
Right? Because he was the answer.
Yes.
But it's, but just always equipping each other in this, and that way it doesn't become such a burden, but it becomes something that brings joy within the church, that we actually get to see people restored and we got to be a part of it. We didn't just say pray harder. We didn't just say read your Bible more. We actually said, hey, we have places for you to take the next step. because
Right.
we may not know how to. We will be the family and community that will wrap around you, but we also have a place for you to go make a difference in your life.
Yes. And if you are someone who is struggling with depression, anxiety, anything on the whole spectrum of challenges in the arena of mental illness, and you are a person of faith, and maybe you have been someone who has experienced that whole well, are you praying enough? Where is your faith in all of this? And you're feeling defeated, and you're feeling like you've just not done enough. If you could just do more. It's not true. Don't believe that, because I'm here to tell you, Jesus and a therapist is perfectly okay. Jesus and a therapist and medication, also okay. There is no reason why you should not have every tool made available to you to get as well as you possibly can become.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and another thing is that a lot of us have been raised to believe or just think that the church is the answer. And we put an expectation on a church and the pastors and all that with something that they're not expected
that's
to do.
true.
And so we have to be careful of like, well, they didn't do it, so I can just live in my mess.
Right.
And
Right.
so it's like, they can be a part of it, but you have to take authority in your own life to be able to say, okay, I need to take the next step.
That's right. Yes. And as we're winding down, one of the things that I want to make sure that we talk about with people is that if you are someone who knows someone that is struggling in your church and you know that they need help, I think it's important to be able to help them find the help. But before you do that, ask some of the questions that we talked about.
Yeah.
Go to the pastors of your church. Find out, what do they do with somebody who needs counseling? How do they refer out? How can they help? And if it's, sometimes churches even have a little bit of financial assistance to help people get the counseling that they need.
Yes.
So I think that's really important
Yeah.
to know. Because again, we are holistic beings. We are emotional, mental, spiritual, and physical beings. So we want to make sure that we are addressing the whole person. Sometimes we just need some help understanding what that really means.
Yeah.
Right.
I agree.
Yeah. So I think other than that, I'm going to look for, we didn't really talk a whole lot pre-show this time about resources, like what kind of books are out there and that. But I can tell you that there are some really good books out there by clinically trained faith-based professionals. We will put a few out there. And I think go to your local church and see what kind of information you can find if you're in need. And just know that if you are being told any message that makes you feel worse about Jesus's love for you, about your faith, that's not how God sees you. That's not true. That's not who you are.
Right.
And you're struggling and you need help. And we all need help from time to time. So,
Well, and if a church tells you, if you go to them and say, hey, we think you need, maybe, we can't help, but we can help you find a counselor, or here's a list. Please don't hear that as we're pushing you off.
Right.
Please hear that
They're doing
as,
the right thing.
Yeah, they're trying to help you because it's beyond the spectrum of their ability. And so if a church said that, I'd be like, oh my gosh, that's so awesome. And so counselors, if you go to a church, I know a lot of you guys, you have your hours and we're all exhausted and we work and all of that kind of stuff. But maybe you can actually go up to your church and help them and say, I'm not able to help, but I would love to see if I could help you get connected with a group of counselors that can help expand your ministry.
right.
And so,
And you can even offer to come in and help train the staff.
Yes.
Maybe you don't have time maybe your caseload is full and you don't have time to put yourself out there as an actual resource. And that's fine. You can possibly offer yourself up to train.
That's
to
good.
help them know what
That's
to
good.
do, to help the staff identify where their ceiling is, like where they need to cap it at their ability to help, and how to refer out, and how to have a conversation with somebody when you know you need to refer out, so they don't feel like they're being abandoned.
Yeah. And send this podcast to your, church leaders and all of that.
And both of us have trained church leaders, so
Yes.
you can also reach out to us and we would be happy to help with that.
Exactly. So we know that this is a big deal, the whole mental health in the church, and I think the church has a powerful stance in the hearts and minds and the healing of people, and so many people go to the church first for help, and let's do it well, you guys.
I agree.
Let's
agree.
care for the sheep, and we're sheep too.
That's right.
Care for the whole herd.
Yeah.
Well, with love and encouragement, and then also expand your family and community to really create that safe place within the church.
Yes, and I want to say two things about that, because as much as it's important for your counselor to have that training to understand the clinical aspect of things, at the end of the day, it really is about who we are in the room with our client, and every one of you has the ability to be what somebody needs in the moment in terms of support, not solving things for them, not fixing things for them, but just coming alongside and being a support and an encouragement.
Empathizing with them.
Right. And I think, when we're looking to that model of walking well with people, it really is another opportunity to reflect Jesus. When you look in the scriptures, as Rick Warren says, Jesus dealt with people with depression and anxiety, people oppressed by unhelpful and even tormenting thoughts. He worked in that arena all the time.
Yeah.
He worked with people who felt terrible about themselves, about who they were as individuals. And so I think this is an opportunity, if we do it well, and sometimes if we do it, we have to do it as a team, we get a better opportunity to reflect who Jesus is.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Well, we are so glad you guys joined us today, and we look forward to talking to you guys next week.
Yeah, and hearing from you all.
Yes.
So have a good week. Take care of each other and be good. Bye.
Bye. Okay, YouTube, do we have anything special for YouTube?
Not that I can think of. Did you like that?
I did.
I had to let the air out for a minute. Sorry.
Thanks, you guys, for doing take 10 with us at the beginning. Or it was 3. It was only 3, right?
It was just 3.
Yeah, it's not bad at all.
It wasn't
yeah,
bad at
so
all.
we love you guys. Be sure to share this and subscribe to our channel.
Over either
Over
there
here
or
or
down
down
there, but
somewhere.
it's find it and
It's
click it.
The button that says, the button that says
Subscribe.
subscribe.
Yes.
Okay. Love you guys. Take care.
Take care.